Welcome to 55 Plus Options Module 2. This is the module that is focused on sole practitioners and small practice proprietors. I'm Keith O'Malley of Law Society Support Services. What we're looking at today are the kind of options that are open to solicitors from the age of 55 onwards. And in this module we're focusing on the situation that solicitors who own a practice or part own a practice find themselves within. And I like to look at options on the basis of three different scenarios. One is that you decide to get out of the business that you're in altogether, the firm. The second is that you wind down your involvement within the firm, and the third is that you could possibly decide to wind up your involvement within the firm and wind up the firm generally. Within each of those options, whether you're thinking in terms of getting out, whether you're thinking about winding down or winding up, you've got the option to either sell, to pass on, or to continue on as you are. So there are really 9 options in total, and we're going to look at each of them. But what I'm going to start by doing is talking through the kind of supports that are available, whether you want to sell the practice, whether you want to pass it on, or whether you want to continue on as you are, remain on your own. So, if you're selling the practice, there are a number of consultants who are very involved in the whole buying and selling of legal practices, and they can provide you with an awful lot of support, and particularly in terms of valuations and negotiations and structuring agreements, all of that kind of stuff. And we've got a list of those available in a booklet that we're making available to you. Also within that booklet there's a lot of guidance on the whole area of valuation. It's always something that is critical to somebody who's selling their firm. Another good facility is the Buy, Sell, Merge facility. This is an online facility where you can advertise your particular interest in either in selling a firm or maybe merging with another practice, those kind of things, buying, selling or merging. And it's a free service that's available and it's anonymous to people who put advertisements in. And there's also the Practice Advisory Service. It's a good step. Practice Advisory Service is a facility where you can bring in a consultant, they can advise you about your practice, and that might be about general practice matters. But if you're thinking in terms of selling, they can advise you with regard to selling. And this is a subsidized service that the Law Society pays half the cost of. If you're thinking in terms of passing it on, colleagues with experience of if they've gone through something similar can be a big support. The Buy, Sell, Merge facility is clearly very relevant. A facilitator, somebody who can come between you and whoever you're talking about, whoever you're talking to about getting involved in the firm is very useful. The template partnership contracts don't exist currently, but Support Services is trying to organise those, and we would expect to have them in place by the end of June or certainly early July. So if you're interested or want to get access to those, contact Support Services in due course. If you have decided that you want to close down the practice one option is colleagues. They can provide you with a lot of support. The other option is registration section or Law Society Regulation Department. This is if you decide that you don't want to sell, you don't want to work on with somebody else, but you just want to stay on your own. Either and that involves closing down or maybe staying on and just winding it down. But the registration section of the Regulation Department can be helpful. So let's start by looking at getting out through selling. What people tend to focus on is, can I do it? You know, how much will I get for the practice? What will I sell? Am I selling the business as a going concern? Am I selling the business as a, am I selling just the files? And how and when should I prepare? What should I do in order to get maximum value? And when should I start? Of course, the answer is as soon as possible. Preparing for sale of a practice is something that you can do for 10 years before you go to the market. Answers to all of these questions are provided in a leaflet that we're working on, and we're going to make available to all members. So we will send you a copy of that in the next week to 10 days. If instead you are interested in getting out by passing on your firm to somebody else, well, what you're going to be interested in is how and who to select. When it's best to agree matters. Do you agree matters before maybe somebody joins the firm, or do you bring them in and try them out as an employee for a while and then try them out? Remuneration in the meanwhile. So if they come in and work for you for a number of months or sometimes years before they actually take over your firm, that transition period, you're both going to have to eat out of the same trough. There's not going to be, more than likely a huge increase in income coming in. So that's always a challenge. And trust is a big issue, because almost invariably what you're going to be doing is passing this firm on to somebody on the understanding that they're going to pay you different amounts of money over a period of time as it comes in for example, work in progress and such like. And you need to believe that they will honour commitments that they make. If you decide you want to get out, as you are, really what you're talking about is closing up. That's your only option. And then you've got the option of selling files maybe. If you don't sell files, then the next option is to distribute them, and there's regulations in place about these, and you can check the guide for good professional conduct for solicitors about how you should contact your clients beforehand, ask them where they would like their files sent to what legal practitioner, and organise that. It is important to understand that once you close, the day you close, that for example, your professional indemnity insurance runs out, you cannot do any more legal work. And it is very important that all files are organised before that date, and everything is done so that clients know where their files are and the Law Society knows where files are. If you decide to wind down through selling, it's really important that you match up with a purchaser that you're going to get on with, because you're talking about staying on and working with that firm on an ongoing basis, having disposed of it. There's always the question of how much time should you give post-disposal, and for how long. Are you going to work 2 days a week, 3 days a week, and are you going to do it for 2 years, or are you going to do it for 10 years? It's important to figure out, are you okay with being an employee? It is quite different to where you're going in, maybe into the same premises that you were in before, where you were the boss, the kingpin, and now somebody else is at the helm running that firm, and you've got a part to play within it. It is important that that you've got good options built into whatever agreement in case things don't work out. So, for example, if you find that you don't like working the firm, or for whatever reason you can't continue on with the firm, it is important that you're not locked out through restrictive clauses and unable to provide legal services within your locality. If you decide that you'd like to wind down through passing on, what you're talking about is taking somebody into the firm and over a period of time allowing them take on management of the firm, and it's important that there's a transition plan in place. It's also important, once again, that there's a good flexible agreement in the hopefully unlikely circumstances that things don't work out. If you want to wind down, as you are on your own, this tends to be the default option. A lot of solicitors, if you're a sole practitioner and nobody's banging on the door to buy your firm, you might have decided you're going to retire at 60 years of age, but you continue on into your early 60s because, you never know when somebody might start banging on the door wanting to buy the firm, or some other opportunity might come up. And a challenge within those kind of circumstances tends to be the whole area, or the balance between income and cost. If you're not working quite as hard and you're not going out and getting business in, the likelihood is that your income is going to drop. And when that happens, you're going to have to cut back your expenses. So sometimes it comes down to, can you afford to keep a secretary or not? And there, can be loyalty involved here and a range of other things. But it is crazy to find yourself in a situation where you're running a practice, you're working 2 or 3 days a week, and you're doing it for no personal financial benefit to yourself. You need to keep your costs in balance with your income. What do you focus on? Do you focus on, if you're not going to work as much, if you're going to wind down, are you going to focus on particular clients, or are you going to focus on particular work? Collaboration is often beneficial, even down to maybe grouping with some other solicitors who are in a similar position to yourself, and passing work that's appropriate to each person, particularly if you're specialising. As we get older, we don't need to compete quite as aggressively as we do when we're younger. So, in terms of winding up, I think it's important to consider that there are opportunities that sometimes that if you push and make a firm, try and get more business and develop a firm up, that sometimes can make sense. And what we would say is, for example, in a wind-up situation, the kind of things that increase the value of a firm tend to be things like lucrative repeat work, non-personal business, so business that's coming in that's not directly relevant and dependent on the principal, automated systems, good risk management, which tends to be in place in larger system firms. So all of these kind of things, which tend to be more closely associated with larger firms and more commercially focused firm, tends to be worth more. So one option is that if you want to sell and you want to maximize value for your firm, this is the kind of work that you should, or this is one option is that you try and push your firm in this way, in this current time of your life. Another option is to pass it on, in passing it on, your aspiration is to leverage what you have for something even greater. And what we're talking about here is you've got a firm and maybe you're a sole practitioner and you've done well within a general practice environment, but that you know of somebody who can come in and do commercial work, you know somebody else who can come in and do particularly lucrative litigation work, and you bring them into your firm and you support them as you get them settled, and your firm ends up bigger and better than it was before. And you might be working towards a situation where you're hoping to retire and to wind down, but if you had 20% or even 15% of this bigger firm, you might be in a much better situation than with 100% of what you're doing at the moment. And really what we're talking about is coming down into the whole area of talent management, that you stop seeing yourself as a solicitor and you see yourself more as somebody who can bring other solicitors on, younger solicitors on, and provide a business environment in which they're going to thrive. The option then, of course, is are you working to leave a legacy of yourself, or are you thinking, are you happy to leave somebody else's legacy? So, if you've been a particularly successful litigation lawyer, say in the area of defamation or whatever, do you bring somebody in or a number of people in who can continue that on so that your firm, stays in a strong position within that area? Or in fact, as I mentioned a moment ago, do you identify people who are involved in commercial work and something that you were never particularly involved in, but you bring them into the firm and you support them establish and make a big name for themselves within that area. This is, of course, is what the large firms that we hear so much of. Now they come up about the William Frys, the Arthur Coxes. They started as small practices, but what they opted to do was to bring on particularly capable people and to grow their practice and in doing so, take quite a different approach to the approach that most legal practitioners do. And a lot of it comes down to this a quote I have from Andrew Carnegie, who was the richest man 100 years ago. The secret of success lies not in doing your own work, but in recognizing the right man to do it. He was so much into this whole idea, in fact, he wrote his own epitaph, and it was, "Here lies one who knew how to get around him men who were cleverer than himself." So this is a real option for you, that you pass on the firm to one particularly capable person or to a number of particularly capable people who then go on and have a lot of success within the firm that maybe you establish or that you've been owning and managing for the last long while, and that you retain a share within that. The other option is to wind up, but remain on your own as you are. And really, what we're talking about here is you want to get particularly, you want to grow your involvement in one area of the business, and to do that, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to focus. So if you've been a general practice solicitor to date, you decide you're particularly interested in the area of wind farms, or you're particularly interested in the area of partnership agreements, and you decide to get good expertise within that area. You start writing articles and generally promoting yourself within that area, and picking up as much work within that area as possible. That kind of a strategy works very well for somebody towards the end of their career, where you zero in on one thing and you get known as an elder lemon in that area. And it really is a case of horses for courses. It's a strategy that's particularly appropriate for people as they get older and they want to do less, but do more lucrative and easier work. And that is done by finding something that you're particularly interested in, getting very highly skilled and expert within that area, and finally building a reputation for yourself within that area. And of course, building a reputation is easiest done through social media. They're the options that are available to sole practitioners and to small practice proprietors, as I would see it, from the age of 55 onwards. We have another module 3, that's going to focus on job seeking.